Hi friends, today I'm going to narrate and summarize the famous book Leaders Eat Last by Simon Sinek. Before that, please subscribe this channel. Leaders eat last. Why some teams pull together and others don't. It is inspirational speaker and leader Simon Sinek's second book. A follow-up to Start With Why. How great leaders inspire everyone to take action. The book's title is derived from a patience practice in which marine corps officers eat last, sacrificing their own needs for those in their care. Sacrifice is key. Sinek explores the ways in which successful individuals and companies develop cultures built on sacrifice, on trust. By intentionally cultivating what Simon Sinek calls a circle of safety, effective leaders protect their organizations from infighting and in doing so, maximize result. Companies don't have to choose between their own people or profit. This is a false dichotomy that often misleads leaders who adopt ruthless measures to pursue the latter at all cost. By examining the benefits of leaders eating last, he articulates a vision he hopes can improve the modern workplace. Short summary. Sinek opens part 1 by telling the story of Captain Mike, Johnny Bravo, Drawley, a man who led with empathy, risking his own life during a dangerous mission in Afghanistan. Sinek uses this story to emphasize the power of empathy as a key component of effective leadership, then goes on to explain the circle of safety. Protecting people within an organization from outside dangers by ensuring that competition and rivalries don't take over. He stresses how stress often has more to do with toxic environment created or enabled by higher-ups than the work itself. In part 2, Sinek delves into early humans and their concerns with survival, which required constant collaboration. The human need for safety is biological by nature. There are 4 chemicals that help shape people's experiences in life: endorphin, dopamine, serotonin, and oxytocin. Sinek also mentions cortisol, a chemical released in our body when we feel stressed or threatened. He argues that we are chemically wired to respond well to certain situations, which conditions our inclinations to return to said situations in the nature. In part 3, Sinek discusses trust. Without trust, commitment rarely becomes an integral part of a company's core values, which in turn leads to high turnover rate. In part 4, Sinek argues that the baby boomer generation's ideology set the stage for a number of issues in the modern workplace, the result being a dangerous tendency to dehumanize groups of people. In part 5, Sinek cautions against the danger of abstraction, generalization, a dehumanizing force in human ethics. The practical side of abstraction turns humans into mere ideas, people into figures on a spreadsheet. When we operate with this mentality, we divorce our conscience from decisions that focus entirely on profit. In part 6, Sinek delves into destructive abundance. This occurs when profits are prioritized for their own sake, even at the expense of employees and potential qualitative experiences. He proposes 5 lessons in leadership. So goes the culture. So goes the company, so goes the leader, so goes the culture. Integrity matters, friends matters, and lead the people, not the numbers. In each of these lessons, Sinek provides specific examples to support his reasoning from the United States Armed Forces to Costco. In part 7, Sinek articulates the challenges that come with our current addiction to technology, particularly among millennials, who often clash with the boomer generation while shaping the modern workplace. We are a society addicted to the dopamine that comes with social media, which jeopardizes our ability to become a collaborative society shaped by empathy and long-term positive change. In part 8, Sinek concludes the book by enforcing empathy and trust as key components of leadership. He invites the reader to embrace more meaningful leadership roles, therefore becoming the type of leader we all wished we had. Leaders Eat Last. Summary Full. Leaders Eat Last starts by saying that today's training are not about developing leaders, but training managers instead. And that goes hand in hand with a short-term mentality that disregards long-term viability and people. Leaders Eat Last wants to change the paradigm. Part 1. Our need to feel safe. Chapter 1. Protection from a wolf. Simon Sinek uses examples from military and combat because he knows, he says, lessons are more obvious in life and death scenarios. He says, though, that the same principles apply everywhere else. Be it an effective platoon in the fog of war or a successful company in a booming market, they all share one thing. Leaders provide cover from above, and the people on the ground look after each other. Chapter 2. Employees are people too. Sinek says that leaders of great organizations don't look at people as commodities to grow the money, but they see money as a commodity to help grow their people. Seeing the relationship between people and money from a people's first perspective, sees the author is a necessity to have the people care about the organization. Once you can put the people first, in return, people will give everything they have to help the organization grow. As leaders, says indeed Sinek, our sole responsibility is to protect our people. And in return, the people will protect each other and advance the organizations as a whole. On the other hand, when our leaders don't take care of us, Sinek says that it's our duty to protect and take care of each other. Simon Sinek might sound an idealist to some, but he says he can't be accused of idealism when the organizations he describes actually do exist and do happen to do well. His quote, "To sacrifice the numbers to save the people and not to sacrifice the people to save the number." Chapter 3. Belongings. Simon Sinek here introduced the concept of the circle of safety. The author says that the world around us is filled with danger and forces trying to hinder us. Back in the days, it was saber-toothed tigers. Today, it is competitors, changing technologies, meeting deadlines, and personal life issues. In some organizations, there are also threats from the inside towards the individuals, such as layoffs and bad culture. When organizations present threat from the inside, the focus of the individual switches to self-preservation. And when that happens, people can't build a unified team but will defend themselves or their smaller team at the cost of overall organizations. It is the duty of the leadership then to set an internal culture that is free of threats and rich in camaraderie. The circle of safety. The wrong circle of safety we have. which is circle of threats. Absent internal threats, instead, people don't need to self-preserve, and our inner drives to socialize and care about the group can take over. And when effective leadership can fill the culture with a sense of belonging and care for the group, that's when the people can effectively tackle the external threats. The good circle of safety as well. Chapter 4. Yeah, but. Simon Sinek reviews the reality of life of many managers and employees who are stuck in bad companies and bad cultures. He says there are very few leaders who strive to make the work environment safe. Some of us like and nod at the theoretical principles, but then we tell ourselves the reality is different. We got to make sales, show some numbers, and of course we got mouths to feed. So people stay put even when they don't like their job, and that's a pity. Because having a job we hate is often worse for our health than not having a job at all. And still, even when we know that, we stay in jobs we hate, convincing ourselves that the dangers of staying are smaller than the dangers of leaving, which the author says it's not true. Control and stress. Sinek cites studies to say that work stress is not caused by pressure and a high responsibility, but by the level of control that people have on their own work. Basically, those who feel empowered to make their own decisions instead of waiting for approval suffer less stress. And it's also not the effort required that makes us stress, but the imbalance between the effort and the reward we receive that is stressful. So, people working for terrible managers who don't reward them suffer higher stress. Part 2. Powerful Forces. Chapter 5. When Enough Was Enough. Simon Sinek says we work at our best when facing external challenges, and that's rooted in biology. However, there are many misguided leaders who believe internal threats are necessary to push people in the right direction, which the author says is simply not true. The biological conflict. We all have a biological conflict of interest within us. We have indeed 4 major chemical incentives in our body. 2 are more selfish for getting things done, endorphin and dopamine, and 2, serotonin and oxytocin, are more selfless activities such as socializing and cooperating. Serotonin and oxytocin are the backbone of the circle of safety. Chapter 6. EDSO. Simon Sinek goes deeper into chemistry here and its effects. Don't skip it though, as this is important to understand the powerful insight of the book. Endorphins are there to hide pain. Dopamine makes you feel good when accomplishing a goal. Serotonin makes you feel grateful for the people who support you. Oxytocin is responsible for love and released when hugging and bonding. Because of serotonin, Simon Sinek says we can't feel a sense of responsibility for the numbers. We can only feel a sense of responsibility to the people. We can't feel responsibility to numbers, only to people. Chapter 7. The Big C. Simon Sinek says that the release of social chemicals is not automatic, but can be inhibited through cortisol if we feel under threat. So, when our inner circle and tribe is ripe with threats, we release cortisol, which stops oxytocin. When that happens, we have no feeling of empathy towards our colleagues and friends and have no drive to help one another. When we are immersed in an environment in which we can't feel safe, we naturally become more selfish, and we start using our time and energy to preserve ourselves through politicking, backbiting, backstriving, gossiping, etc., etc. On the other hand, with a well-functioning circle of safety, serotonin and oxytocin can be released, and we can even deploy our selfish chemicals and drives for good use. For example, to further the goals and benefits of our whole organization and group, add value to the customers. Chapter 8. Why we have leaders. As much as it's popular to say We are all equal. The truth is, we are not, and we will never be. Sinek says we need a social hierarchy to avoid the constant battle for good, battle for food that would leave us all divided and animals. With a hierarchy, instead, we voluntarily step back and allow the higher status individuals to serve themselves first. However, Sinek says, the higher status comes at a price, and it's this price that our current society often forgets. The price for high status is to defend the group. The alpha males of the tribe, the strongest of the group and brimming of serotonin, should indeed be the first to rush towards danger and protect the rest of the group. And that's why we give them first choice of mate. If they die early from the threats, we want to keep their genes in the group. The group is not stupid or irrational. We don't give them all the perks of nothing. That wouldn't be fair. That's why we get angry for huge severance payments of many executives. They took the perks and the money but didn't offer any protection. They actually often do just the opposite. They sacrifice their people to boost their interest. Fame and financial wealth should be a byproduct of alpha status, not a way to achieve it. The rank of office, says Simon Sinek, is not what makes a leader. Leadership is the choice to serve others with or without any formal rank. Those who want to enjoy the leader's perks without fulfilling the obligations are, by definition, weak leaders. True leaders are the ones who raise through the ranks because they fulfill their obligation and the tribe offers them the higher status. It's obvious then why good leaders do well for their tribes in hard times, says Sinek. It's because their people willingly commit to see them, their tribe and their company grows strong. Leadership is the choice to serve others with or without the formal rank. Part 3. Reality. Chapter 9. The courage to do the right thing. Simon Sinek says we trust people, not the rules. We don't really care about rules as long as the people in charge are doing the right thing for us. That's why we find bureaucrats and sticklers for the rules annoying. The rules are there to serve us, not the other way. And when the rules don't serve us anymore, there's no point in following and keeping them. In strong organizations, people break the rules for the organization's benefit. In weak organizations, people break the rules for their own personal gain. Chapter 10. Snowmobile in the Desert. Simon Sinek says it is ironic what happened with technology. Our limbic brain controls our feelings and ability to trust and cooperate. And it's exactly that ability that allowed us to build this complex and technologically advanced world we live in. And it's ironic that the same technology is making it harder for us to cooperate and live well with one another. He uses the booming self-help industry as the sign that we are growing apart from each other and growing more and more unhappy. Part 4. How we got here. Chapter 11. The boom before the bust. Simon Sinek says that World War I generation, the Great Generation, was all about serving others. The baby boomers instead switched towards a path of only caring about themselves. Chapter 12. The boomers all grown up. Disposable technologies took root with the baby boomers, and that's when we started our look for more things to throw out. Eventually, it ended up expanding to people started becoming disposable. The author says we'll expand later on the fact that we have become abstractions. We are now enormous customers, lines on email list, avatars, and expenses on a spreadsheet. Part 5. The Abstract Challenge. Chapter 13. Abstraction kills. I love Simon Sinek's take on Milgram's experiment. He first notices that people were more likely to inflict that more severe electric shock when they were not able to see the victim. And then he says that the same experiment is taking place right now in offices around the world. When people could not see the victims weren't really real. but become abstractions. Similarly, the more abstract and physically distant the people become more any headquarters or high up office floor, the more we become capable of harming them with our decisions. Chapter 14, Modern Abstraction. Sinek draws a parallel between the Nazi famous defense of "I was following orders" to the modern "we have to provide shareholder value" of corporate world. Sinek says that we are visual animals. We pursue things we can see. If we see a person needing help, we help. If there's a clear vision of brighter future, we build it. And if we have to work to increase a number from X to Y, we do that too. The problem is in the pain and the harm behind those numbers, and which we can't see. When we can't see our customers in debt, we pursue the most immediate thing we can see, metrics and KPLs. And to justify any actions, the new corporate mantra is we work to provide shareholder value, or we need to fulfill our fiduciary duty. The author says that similar to the Milgram experiments, where some people blamed the people who are receiving the shocks, some bankers in the latest crisis, and ended up blaming the defaulting homeowners. He quotes Jamie Dimon, says, "Jamie Dimon, we are not evicting people, we deserve to stay in their house." Funny enough, Duckworth used Jamie Dimon as an example. Provider shareholder value is equal to "I was following orders." Chapter 15, Managing the Abstraction. Simon Sinek proposes a few rules to tackle the dangers of abstraction. Number 1, keep it real. Bring people together. The internet can give us deep and trusting relationship. Trust is formed in person. Number 2, keep it manageable. 150 max. Keep your group at no more than 150 people to reap the benefit of group's cohesion and sense of tribal belonging. Number 3, meet people you help. Getting a visual and real-world experience of the impact of your work will reward you and motivate you to do even more. Number 4, give time, not money. We value time and effort we receive more than money. Read more on Drive by Daniel Pink. Number 5, be patient. 7 days and 7 years. It takes time to develop the bond of love and trust. Simon doesn't know how long it takes, but it's more than 7 days and less than 7 years. Chapter 16, Imbalance. Many organizations today are imbalanced in terms of selfish and social pursuit, a situation which he calls destructive abundance. Destructive abundance is too much dopamine, goal accomplishment, and no oxytocin, social chemical. It's getting the results without caring for those who produce the results. And it's focusing on the final score, forgetting why we even started in the first place. Destructive abundance is often brought by leaders whom don't take it upon themselves to the shoulder the responsibilities of leadership. Part 6, Destructive Abundance. Chapter 17, Leadership Lesson 1, Culture is equal to company. Simon Sinek uses a beautiful quote to introduce his concept. You can easily judge the character of a man by how he treats those who can do nothing for him. What it means is that a strong company culture will treat everyone well and not just those who are paying them or earning money at the moment. The author says that the people working in bad companies are neither good nor evil in themselves, but the companies they work for make it possible for them to do bad and evil. Chapter 18, Leadership, Lesson 2, Leader is equal to culture. Simon says that leaders set the tone of behavior in an organization. Strong leaders delegate responsibilities and empower their subordinates. They foster an environment where social chemicals and the relative behaviors are abundant and people look after each other. He outlines the example of O'Neill in Merrill Lynch as a terrible example of a bad leader ruining a culture and destroying a company. And he details the positive example of Captain Marquette aboard the Santa Fe submarine. He also speaks at the length about Jack Welch and Senegal from Costco. Chapter 19, Leadership Lesson 3, Integrity Matters. Simon Sinek says that when we cannot trust the people we are supposed to lead us and serve us, then the whole fabric of our groups comes apart. Leadership is about integrity, the adherence to a code of morals, telling the truth, incorruptibility, and when our words and deeds are aligned. The worst betrayal of integrity is when people tell us what we want to hear and change their stance to suit their interest. Honesty, telling the truth, that's simple. Accountability, of course. Chapter 20, Leadership Lesson 4, Friends Matter. The U.S. Congress worked better in the past because Democrats and Republicans mingled with each other and spoke to each other once business was settled. The author says it's very healthy indeed to meet and spend time together out of the business context, as we are more inclined to see people as human beings and develop deeper friendships. When we never met and speak to our opponents, we also tend to demonize our opponents. Also see the Lucifer effect. Chapter 21, Leadership Lesson 5, Lead People, Not Numbers. Here Simon Sinek debunk the myth of Jack Welch, the famed CEO of General Electric. Welch was the typical leader who purported to serve the shareholders and went after the short-term gains. Sinek says he didn't leave behind as great company as most people think. The author then compares him to Costco's CEO, who pays his employees above minimum legal wage and is interested in people and long-term growth. Nobody knows him, but he built a far more solid company. His returns on share also have been far larger. Sinek says that teams led by directive leaders initially outperform those led by empowering leaders, but in the long run, empowering leaders do better. Part 7, A Society of Addicts. Chapter 22, At the center of all our problem is us. Sinek says that managers look after numbers and results. Leaders look after us. But before we can point any finger at the terrible manager, we have to point the finger at ourselves first. We have to look at ourselves and we have to admit we are the problem. Managers look after numbers. Leaders look after people. Chapter 23, At Any Expense. Simon Sinek says the desire to win has always existed and it always caused problems. He says the desire to win should not take precedence over taking care of the people we serve. Winning should not come at the cost of serving people. Chapter 24, The Abstract Generation. Simon Sinek says that cell phones are new drug for Generation Y. The digital addiction is making the new generation more impatient in the best case scenario and more lonely and isolated at worst. The author then keeps laying it on thick on Generation Y, saying it's superficial generation all about having an impact and raising our awareness that it forgets that to have an impact and to solve problems requires greed, determination, and hard work, and doesn't happen with a share or a like. Top 10 quotes from Leaders Eat Last. Number 1. If your actions inspire others to dream more, learn more, do more, become more, you are a leader. Number 2. You can easily judge the character of a man by how he treats those who can do nothing for him. Number 3. The true price of leadership is the willingness to place the needs of others above your own. Great leaders truly care about those they are privileged to lead and understand that the true cost of the leadership privilege comes at the expense of self-interest. Number 4. As the Zen Buddhist says goes, how you do anything is how you do everything. Number 5. Returning from work feeling inspired, safe, fulfilled, and grateful is a natural human right to which we are all entitled and not a modern luxury that only a few lucky ones are able to find. 6. And when a leader embraces their responsibility to care for people instead of caring for numbers, then people will follow, solve problems, and see to it that leaders' visions comes to life the right way, a stable way and not the expedient way. Number 7. It is not the genius at the top giving direction that makes people great. It is great people that make the guy at the top look like a genius. Number 8. Let us all be the leaders we wish we had. Number 9. Stress and anxiety at work has less to do with the work we do and more to do with weak management and leadership. Number 10. Children are better off having a parent who works into the night in a job they love than a parent who works shorter hours but comes home unhappy.